And in 1 Chronicles chapter number 14, David has been officially anointed as the next king of Israel. He's been officially put into place to replace King Saul. And the Bible says that when the Philistines heard about it, they immediately went up to take David on. It said they went up to take David because they knew that he was a new king and they thought that it would be easy to take him over. So they went up to meet David. And I love David's response because where most of us, myself included, most of us, we would have run in fear. We would have been afraid. We would have been hiding. When we heard a big army was coming to face us, most of us would have run. David said no. The Bible says that David said he went out to meet them. David heard this army's coming and he went out to meet them. That's crazy. These people are coming to take him out and he went out to meet them. He went to take them head on because the amazing thing is when you truly know who you are in Christ, when you truly know who you are with God working on your side, nothing scares you. When you truly know God is on the inside of you and fighting with you and he's not against you, but he is for you, you're willing to take everything head on. And that's what David did. David said, listen, God helped me slay giants. He helped me slay lions and tigers, bears, all these things. Like he's helped me do all this. I know God didn't bring me this far to leave me. So he said, okay, you want to come at me? I'm going to come at you. And he went out to meet them. And it says in 1 Chronicles 14, verse 9, now the Philistines had come and raided the valley of Rephaim. So David inquired of God, shall I go and attack the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hands? And the Lord answered him. See, what's amazing is David inquired and God answered. Don't miss that. It's simple, but David inquired and God answered. And it's amazing the things that God will speak to your life if you'll just ask. It's amazing the things God will speak to you if you just ask. If you just acknowledge, I don't have the answer, I don't know the solution, I can't solve the problem, and ask. He inquired of the Lord, and the Lord answered him, go, I will deliver them into your hands. So David and his men went up to Baal Perazim, and there he defeated them. And he said, as the waters break out, God has broken out against my enemies by my hand. So that place was called Baal Perazim. And the Philistines had abandoned their gods there, and David gave orders to burn them in the fire. Once more, the Philistines raided the valley. Okay, so it happens again. It happens again. I don't know if you've ever had a time like this in your life where it seemed like you conquered one battle, and it happened again. Where you overcame one problem, and it happened again. You overcame one struggle, and it happened again. So the first time it happened, David inquired of the Lord, asked him, what do I do? God said, okay, I want you to go out and I want you to face them. So now it happens a second time. So God's going to tell him to do the same exact thing, right? No. He comes with something different. He says, so David inquired of God again, and God answered him, do not go directly after them, but circle around them and attack them in front of the poplar trees. And as soon as you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the poplar trees, move out to battle, because that will mean God has gone out in front of you to strike the Philistine army. So David did as God commanded him, and they struck down the Philistine army all the way from Gibeon to Gezer. David is faced with two very similar scenarios, right? I think we can all agree. In both instances, it says that the Philistines came and raided the valley. And the first time, David inquired of God. God told him to go and to face them. He did it, and he was victorious. So the second time it happens, you would imagine that God is going to tell him to do the same exact thing that had already worked once before. But this time he goes to God, and God says, no, I want you to change it up a little bit. I don't want you to go directly to them. I want you to circle around them. So David and his men, they do what God says the second time, and God gives them victory once again. Both problems were the same, and the promise that God gave of victory both times was the same, but the instructions that God gave to see victory were different. And here's the question I want to ask today. What if David and his men would have said, you know what? We're just going to do the second time what worked the first time. We're going to do the second time what God told us to do the first time. What would have happened if David and his men would have missed or maybe even ignored the instructions from God the second time and just done what had worked the first time? What if David, even better, what if David and his men would have said, you know what, I'm not even going to ask God this time. The problem's the same. The promise is the same. I'm not even going to ask God what I need to do this time because he already gave me an answer before and it worked out great. I'm just going to do it again this time. If David and his men would have done the same thing the second time that God told them to do the first time, instead of inquiring of God the second time to see what he wanted them to do the second time, they would have been defeated. Because God is the same. His word is the same, but the way that he fulfills his word changes. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Don't get it twisted. He is the same. If he said this is right, this is right. If he said this is wrong, this is wrong. It's gospel truth. But the way he fulfills his word changes. And if we're not careful, we'll get so tied to the method that we miss the miraculous. And many of us have become so tied to methods that we are missing the miraculous. And we got to realize and understand that God is the same and he is faithful and he will fulfill the promise time and time again, but he's not going to do it the same way every time. So I want to talk to you this morning on the subject, it's different this time. It's different this time. Let's pray together. God, I thank you for today, and I just thank you that we're able to gather together. I thank you that we're able to be here in-house. Thank you that others are able to join us online. I thank you that we're able to worship your name together. I'm thankful that you're able to speak to us together. And Lord, I pray that you would prepare our hearts, that you would speak to us directly, individually, that you would say exactly what it is you want to say to our hearts, because God, I know you can take the same words and speak differently to each and every person here. Help them not to see and hear from me, but to see and to hear from you. And I thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. Now, I don't know how many of you have, kind of have your master's, doctorates, and all that kind of stuff. Like you finished school. I didn't actually finish college. I started college, then I kind of didn't finish it. But one thing I've always tried to do is to continue to better myself, right? Even those who have your doctors and masters, how many of you are constantly trying to better yourself, right? Like you're constantly trying, you're reading more. Like that's me. Like I'm reading all these things. I'm listening to podcasts. I'm listening to other pastors. Like I'm constantly trying to grow, trying to learn more. I think that's good. I think it is good for us to continue to try to better ourselves. And I know some will be like, well, the Bible's the only book you need to read. It's like, okay, cool. But, it's okay to read other books too. It's okay to listen to other people speak too, as long as it doesn't contradict God's word. The most important book you could read, if you only got time for one, yes, read the Bible. And make sure you know it, because what happens too is we read other things that contradict God's word, and if you don't know God's word, you don't know what contradicts God's word. So since somebody said it, that said pastor in front of their name, we think that it's gospel truth, but what they're saying isn't even in the gospel. So it is important to read God's word, but it is also important to be able to just study and to constantly try to get better and to make sure it's not contradicting God's word and to just better yourself and to grow. But there are some things, I will admit, that are a complete waste of time to read. Like some books, you read them and you feel less smart. Right? You ever had one of those? It's like you read it and you felt less. Some of you are like, I read one book one time, it made me feel less smart, so I'm just not reading any more books. I get it, but it's like you read it, you feel less smart. Then there's some books that are a waste of time because you could honestly learn it from somewhere else. Like you could learn it from personal experience. You don't need to read a book about it, right? Like you don't need to read a book to know if you touch a stove, it's going to burn you if it's on. Like you know that. But people still write books about stuff and sell them and make money off of stuff that we don't even really need to read about to know. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. Negotiation. You don't need to read a book on negotiation. Negotiation's important. Very important. It's important in business. It's important in your life. But you don't need to read a book about it. I'm going to save you a lot of money. This is all you need to do. You want to be a master negotiator? You want to be able to negotiate with somebody and talk them, just be able to negotiate somebody who has $1 million into giving you that $1 million and you just giving them a high five. You want to be able to negotiate like that? You're like, no, I don't need, okay, fine, whatever. I do. But it's you want to be able to negotiate so well, this is all you need to do. I'm going to save you some money. Have a conversation with a toddler. It don't have to be your toddler. Just have a conversation with a toddler. Parents, you're shaking your head. Have a conversation with a toddler. They are master negotiators. Master negotiators. They know how to talk you out of anything, into anything, and you don't even realize that you're being worked, right? You don't even know it, and they're doing it. This happened a few weeks ago. Judah and Elijah, they had made a huge mess. Our 3-year-old and almost 2-year-old made a huge mess in the house. And it's okay, they were just being kids, but I'm teaching them the right way. I'm teaching them it's okay to make big messes, but you need to clean them up. Right? You can make a mess, but clean it up. When I first became a parent, I was just no mess. We don't have messes in the house. Then I realized it's kind of depriving them of childhood. So I'm okay, you can make a mess, but you need to clean it up. And so we were getting ready to go somewhere. They had made this huge mess, and I told Judah, I said, you and Eli, if you will clean all this up, I'll give you guys a lollipop. Now, tacos are my love language. Sweets are Judah's language. That's it. So I said, if you clean this up, I will give you a lollipop. And he said, you promise? And I said, yes. So he runs over to Elijah and he says, come on, Eli, Dad said we could have a lollipop. And I watched this unfold. He takes Elijah, leads him over to the pantry, opens the door, gets a lollipop out, and gets ready to open it. And I'm watching this in disbelief because my dude has not cleaned a single thing off the floor. And so I said, Judah, what are you doing? And he said, you told me I could have a lollipop. And I said, yeah, after you cleaned up. He said, no, you didn't. And I said, yeah, bro. I said, clean up, then you can have a lollipop. He said, I didn't hear that. I said, no, I told you, clean the mess up, then you can have a lollipop. He said, no, you promised me I could have a lollipop. I said, yes, after you clean up. And he said, Dad, are you sure? And so then I'm sitting here and I'm second guessing myself. Did I say he had to clean up? Or did I just say he needed to go get a lollipop? I can't even, I'm trying to figure out now. I'm second guessing myself. So then this dude, 3 years old, this 3-year-old punk of mine says, okay, I'll tell you what. Just like that. It's just the way he says things. I'm I don't know where you're learning to talk like this. I don't appreciate it. He's I'll tell you what. I'll have the lollipop. And then as a way to say thank you for letting us have the lollipop, we'll clean up everything. And I said, no. I said, you're cleaning up. And as a way to say thank you for cleaning up, I'm giving you a lollipop. I was I promised you the lollipop, but it came with some instructions, right? You gotta clean up first. He's well, what? He just kept going back and forth. I was no, the instructions were there. The promise was there, yes, you will get the lollipop. But first you gotta do what I told you to do. See, the first thing I need you to see, if you're taking notes, write this down, type it in the chat, is that promises come with instructions. Promises come with instructions. It's a promise with instructions. It said in verse number 10, David inquired of God. See, God makes promises, and then he gives you instructions to lead to the fulfillment of the promise. So David inquired of God, shall I go and attack the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hands? And the Lord answered him, go, I will deliver them into your hands. He said, I will deliver them into your hands. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that wonderful? God said, I will deliver them into your hands. This is so amazing. God himself told David, I will deliver them into your hands. That's the promise. It's amazing. It's so great. God said, I'm going to deliver them into your hands. It's the promise. What we tend to do, though, is we tend to see that big part, but we overlook the little part. See, there was a little part before God said, I will deliver them into your hands. And what happens is we see the big part, we see the promise, we see what God says he's going to do, but we overlook what he says that we need to do. Because there's a little word in there that it's so small, you might have even overlooked it. And the word is go. God said, go, and I will deliver them into your hands. He said, go. There's a promise, but the promise is paired with the instruction. And we tend to get so hyped up on the promise that we completely miss or even ignore the instructions. And the thing about God, one of the greatest traits that God has that we're able to depend on, one of the greatest traits that God has that we're able to rest in, one of the most amazing truths of God that we can just be confident in, that we can rest in, is that God will keep his word. God will keep his word. We can rest in that. We can rest in the truth that God cannot lie. But one of the greatest characteristics of God that we can celebrate can also sometimes be a little bit frustrating. Can I be honest? It could be a little bit frustrating because God cannot lie. That's true. God keeps his promises. That's true. But he keeps the whole promise, the whole thing, not just part of it, but God keeps the whole promise. God told David and his men, he said, go, I will deliver them into your hands. He said, go, I will deliver them into your hands. In other words, God told David he would give his men victory if they would go. He said, I'm going to give you victory if you go. It's a package deal. It's not one or the other. It's not you get the promise without the instruction. It's not that you follow the instructions and don't get the promise. It's a package deal. God said, if you do this, then this will happen. If you follow this instruction, then this will happen. And some of us, we've been sitting around and we've been thinking that God lied to us. We've been thinking that God is a liar because what he promised has not been happening. But if you feel that way, you need to check yourself. Somebody say, check yourself. You need to check yourself. If you feel like God lied to you because you haven't seen what he promised a long time ago, you need to check yourself because God cannot lie. God is not a liar. He cannot lie. God can't lie, but you know what? We can disobey. We can disobey. We can ignore the instructions that he gives us. We can ignore the command that he gives us. God said, go, and I will deliver them into your hands. This means if they would not have gone, they would not have been delivered into their hands. And many of us are sitting here and we're like, God, I need you to do it. God, I need you to come through. God, I need you to fulfill what you said. And God said, yeah, when you fulfill what I told you to do. We're sitting here like, God, you said I could have a lollipop. And God said, yeah, after you clean up the mess, after you do what you're supposed to do, after you fulfill what you're supposed to do. God can't lie. And maybe, just maybe, it's not that God lied, it's that we didn't listen. I'm just saying, maybe God didn't lie. Maybe we just didn't listen. Because there's a lot of us, myself included, that we have a bad habit of hearing what we want to hear. Come on, how many of y'all can have a conversation with somebody and you walk away from the conversation and you heard something completely different? Don't be looking at your spouse. You heard something completely different than what they said in that conversation because we have a bad habit of hearing what we want to hear. So we hear the big part from God. We hear him say, here's a promise. That's awesome. We're excited. We're amped because we hear him say, there's a promise. But that's all we hear. We have selective hearing. We hear the promise, but we don't hear the instruction. So when we hear the part that we want to hear, that's all we listen to. The promise, the good part. I want to hear what God's going to do for me. I don't want to hear that I got to go and do something I don't want to do for somebody else. So it's like, God, you said that you were going to bless me and my relationship. You said you were going to bless this relationship. It was going to be amazing. No, what God really said was, if you would end this toxic relationship, then he would bring you a blessed relationship. But we don't want to follow that instruction because we're kind of tied to this person. So we have this person there. It's like, well, you know what? God, you said you were going to heal my heart of all the pain that I've been through by letting me see all my enemies get beat down. God, you said the pain that I felt from everybody else all these years, you're going to heal my hurt by letting me see all the enemies in my life get beat down. No. What God really said was, if you would forgive them, you would find healing. If you would let it go, you would find healing. If you would say, I don't understand why you did it. I don't like that you did it. I'm never going to give you an opportunity to do it again, but I forgive you. Then you would find the healing that you need to find. But if you sit around your entire life waiting on payback for the people that hurt you, well, God don't pay every Saturday night, but he always pays Friday night, whatever it is, I don't remember. He always pays. Yeah, if you keep sitting around waiting for God to just take somebody out, just make them hurt the way that you hurt, you're going to be waiting a long time. And you know what? You're not going to ever find healing. You're going to find bitterness. God said, if you want to be healed, you got to forgive. And we're like, oh, no. He said he was going to heal because I was going to see my enemies hurt. No, sometimes the most frustrating thing for your enemy is when you walk in such freedom that you just forgive them and they don't even understand why you don't hate them anymore. They don't understand why you can go on with your life. They don't understand why even though they tried to beat you down, your head is held up high. They don't understand why you walk the way you do. They don't understand why you talk the way you do. They don't understand how you have the joy that you have. Sometimes the healing that you find in forgiving somebody else actually is the thing that kind of moves your enemy to the side. Or it's like, you know what, God, you said that you were going to bless me abundantly. My finances were going to be better. It's going to be amazing. Everything that I have is going to multiply. And God's like, no, I said give and it will be given back to you. Give and it will be given back to you. Pressed down, multiplied, shaken together. But we just skip that part and we're like, why isn't God blessing me? Why is God doing it for them? Why doesn't God do it for me? Why is he doing it for everybody else? Instructions come with the promise. Instructions come with the promise. David and his men went. And then God gave them the victory. The promise was the victory. The instruction was to go. What instructions have you been ignoring? What things has God told you to do that you've been ignoring? It doesn't even have to be something you just heard, something that you read, something in God's word you've been reading and you've been feeling like, oh, this word is for me, but you're not doing what it says to do and you're frustrated because you're not seeing what it says you'll have. God gave a promise, but he gave instructions. And so often we ignore the instructions, or even more so than that, we will apply old instructions to a new promise. We'll apply old instructions to a new promise. The next thing I need you to see this morning, write this down, type it in the chat, is the similar promise with new instructions. Similar promise, new instructions. The first time David went to God and said, God, what do I do? God said, I want you to go. So the same enemy comes again, faces David again. David goes back to God again, and God gives him a different set of instructions. And this time he says something a little different. It says in verse 14, David inquired of God again, and God answered him, do not. The first time God said do, this time he says do not. The first time God told him to go, this time he says don't go. Do you kind of see why it's important that you have a daily walk with God? Do you kind of see why it's important that it's not just on Sunday mornings, that it's not just the first time that you need something, but it's the second time and the third time and the fourth time and the fifth time? Do you kind of see the importance of consistency? Of saying it's not just about walking with Christ once a month and I feel good about myself, but it's about saying, God, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Like I'm not in every other week, God. I'm not going to reach out every other week. I'm not going to pray every other week. I'm not going to church every other week. God, I need you every day of the week. I need you every week of the month. I need you every month of the year. I need you every hour of every day. The first time David asked him, it was one thing. The second time, it looks the exact same. The exact same. Right? You ever had there's somebody that set you off and you prayed and God told you how to deal with it, so now somebody else comes that sets you off and you try to handle them the same way you handled the first time and it didn't work out well. You know why? Because not everybody's the same. God will give different instructions that you need for the situation that you're facing. So David asked him, what do I do? God said, do not go directly after them, but circle around and attack them in front of the poplar trees. And as soon as you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the poplar trees, move out to battle, because that will mean that God has gone out in front of you to strike the Philistine army. Hold up. Makes no sense on the surface. Right? I'm just going to say that right now. Makes no sense on the surface. I grew up in church, right? I know not all of us did. Some of us, this is our second Sunday in church. I grew up in church, and I always heard God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Same yesterday, today, and forever. So to me, God should be given the same answer of how to handle it both times. But it doesn't mean that God's ways are the same yesterday, today. It's who he is. It's his word. It's his faithfulness. It's his promise. But the way God works changes. But it's frustrating. It would confuse me, because the first time David asked God what to do, God gave him an instruction. They followed the instruction. He said, go. So they went, and they were victorious. So in my mind, you would think that the next time that they face the same thing and they show up again, that God would give the same instruction again. But this time, the enemy shows up again. David asks him for instructions, and God says, do not go after them. Do not go. Am I the only one that would be frustrated? Am I the only one that would be frustrated by what seemed like inconsistency? Some of us, we don't even have to imagine what it would be like, because we've lived it. Some of us, we've asked God what to do, and he's given us an answer. And then the same problem happened, and we asked him again, and he gave us a different answer. It seems like such a frustrating thing, because David asked God what to do, and God gave him victory again, but he did it in a different way. He gave him victory again, but he gave him a different set of instructions. He gave him a different method of the way to do it. He said, I know that the first time this happened, I told you to go after them, but I don't want you to do that this time. This time, I do not want you to go after them. This time, I want you to hang back, and I want you to watch the trees. And when you see the trees do what they need to do, then I want you to come out. The promise was essentially the same, but the method was different. The promise was the same. First time God said, I'm going to give you victory. Second time God said, I'm going to give you victory. Same promise, but the instructions were different. And so many of us are so tied to the method that we're missing the message. We're so tied to the method, the way, that we're missing the message. What miracles are you missing out on because you're too tied to the method instead of the message? What miracles are you missing out on because you're so tied to how God's going to do it instead of what God is going to do? You're so tied to how you want God to do it instead of what God is going to do. Because see, God is always working, but he doesn't always use the same method. He's always working, but it's not always the same. And many of us, this is why we're stuck. This is why we haven't seen progress. This is why we feel frustrated, because we're so busy praying for God to do it the way that he did it that we're missing the way he's doing it now. We're so busy praying for God to do everything else that he's done before that we're missing what he's doing in this moment. We're frustrated because somebody else made a decision based on what God told them to do, and it blessed their business. So then for our business, we made the same decision, and it failed. But God's saying, the thing I told them to do is not the thing I'm telling you to do. And if you would have asked me, then I could have told you. If you would have come to me, then I could have told you. If you would have inquired and said, God, I know the first time this happened for somebody else, you did it this way. But God, how do you want to do it in my life? How do you want to move in my life? Then God could have told you. But because we're so busy looking at the way God blesses everybody else and the things that everybody else did to be blessed, and we think if we invest in the same stock that they did, that we'll get everything that they got. God said, no, I don't want you doing any of that. I want you investing in the kingdom. If you'll invest in the kingdom, then you'll see what I have for you. There's things in our lives where we're so busy looking at everything that's already happened that we can't see what God's about to do. We can't even see what is about to happen. Some of us praying and asking God to move in our lives, move in our world the way that he did for our parents and for our grandparents. And the truth is God can do it, and I believe God will do it, but it may not look the way it did for them. It may not happen the way it happened for them. The same things that worked for them may not work for us, may not work for you. Raising our families, and we're like, well, they raised their family this way. They did this, they did this. And God's like, your children aren't their children. And the reason your kids keep acting up is because they know that you're not really invested enough in their lives to actually seek my behalf. Because if you sought me, I could help you realize your kid is not wired the way that kid is wired. So if you keep treating them the way they treat their kid, trying to raise them, it's just going to push them away. Some of us with church, it's like, I want my church to be a certain way. I want the church to be the way that I grew up. I want the church to be like the church I came from. I want the church to be like the church down the street. And God said, I didn't call your church to be like that church. I called your church to be the church I created them to be. And if you continue to try to change the church that God has given you to something else, then it will never fulfill what God has called it to do. Got to let go of the method and embrace the message. Embrace what God is saying in the moment. Just do this real quick. Just loosen up. Y'all uptight. Just loosen up a little bit. Come on, loosen up. Let go of the method. We're so tied to how it has to look. We're so tied to the way it has to be and everything. I remember when I was 8 years old and this happened and it felt good. And so I need that to happen. I need this to be the same way in my life again. God said, it's not the same. Because my word is the same, and I'll still do it, and I'm still working, but methods change. Methods change. Because even though it may have different instructions, and this is what I want everybody to hear, and this is going to make my everybody who's been praying and asking God to do the same things you've been seeing, here's something that's going to make you feel really good. It can be different instructions, but the same outcome. Different instructions, same outcome. Praying for a move of God, different instructions, the same outcome. God's still going to move. God's still going to show up. Been asking for God to, different instructions, the same outcome. Said, so David did as God commanded him. I'll close with this. David did as God commanded him. And they struck down the Philistine army all the way from Gibeon to Gezer. All right, I'm going to read that one more time because I think y'all missed the most important part. So I'm going to read it one more time. David did as God commanded him. This is the second time. First time David did what God told him to do. The second time, David did as God commanded him. Listen to me. That's all that matters. That is all that matters. David did as God commanded him. That's all that matters. Doesn't matter if it looks the same, doesn't matter if it sounds the same, doesn't matter if it is the same, doesn't matter if it feels the same, if everybody else says it's the same or not. As long as you are doing what God has commanded you to do. Not your family, not the friend, not the person you idolize, not somebody else. As long as you are doing what God has commanded you to do. Commanded you to do. As long as you are fulfilling what God has told you to do. Doing it the way God told you to do it. Listening the way he told you to listen. Following the instructions he told you to follow. As long as you are doing what God has commanded you to do, it does not matter what anybody else says. Doesn't matter anybody else's opinion. Doesn't matter if they tell you you're doing it wrong. As long as you are doing what God commanded you to do. The first time, the instructions were different than the second time. But both times, David did as God commanded him to do. That's the consistency here. It's not that the instructions were the same. The promise was the same, and David's obedience was the same. Both times, David did exactly what God told him to do. David didn't say, God, it's not what you told me to do the first time. God, it's not what you told them to do. God, it's not what I really feel in my spirit right now. No, David said, okay, God, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's the same enemy, same situation, and you want me to do it differently. But because you said to do it differently, I'm going to do what you have commanded me to do. If David and his men would have done the second time what worked the first time, they would have been defeated. And a lot of us are walking around defeated because we keep trying the same thing over and over and over and over. 20 years later, trying to do what worked one time 20 years ago. Trying to do what worked 10 years ago. Trying to do what worked last year. God said, my promise is true, but the instructions are different. But different instructions can still bring the same outcome. Because in the end, I'm going to be faithful. In the end, I'm going to do exactly what I said I would do. I don't know if you like math or not. I know that math is the subject that I loathe more than anything. And what really gets me is that teachers always said you won't always have a calculator, and they lied because we do. But when I was in school, the reason I didn't like math was because my memory is a lot more I don't have photographic memory, but my memory is much more I remember things that I see, right? I remember answers, trying to figure out how to get to it. And that was the thing about math that always got me, is you always had to show your work. Do y'all remember this? Am I showing my age? I got dressed this morning, and I was like, babe, what do you think of my outfit? And she was like, it's cute. She was like, you look like a dad. Well, I am one. She was like, you look your age. You look 30. You look old. It's like, thank you. I guess I'm okay looking my age sometimes, but I'm showing my age right now because you had to show your work. Actually, oh my gosh, I'm not even 30 anymore. I'm 31. Woo! It's okay. She's about to be 32. She's in kids, so she don't even know I said that. Anyways, you always had to show your work, right? And that's what always got me in school. You had to show your work. If you don't have to show your work now, don't tell me because I'm jealous. Had to show your work on the math problems. And what always frustrated me is I would get the right answer. But the teacher would be like, whose paper you looked at? I look at anybody's paper. Well, you got the answer, but you did it wrong. Well, if I got the answer, then maybe I didn't do it wrong. Know your work. It's not the right work. And it was so frustrating to me because Dad was the one who helped me with math because we know Mom wasn't going to do it. Dad was the one who helped me with math. And he just had, the way his mind works was different than the way my math teacher worked. So I'm just doing it the way I've been taught to do it. And I'm getting the right answers. And they're marking it wrong because the work was wrong. And I'm like, what I did still got me the answer. God is trying to help somebody see today is that he may be giving you some different instructions, but the outcome is going to be the same. And if you get so tied up in the way the instructions look and the work looks that you ignore the answer and you say the answer is wrong, you're going to miss what he's trying to do. Many of us are turning away what God has for us because it looks different than what we're used to. And he said the work is different, but the answer is the same. The instructions are different, but the outcome is the same. God said, listen, David, I want you to do it differently this time. The instructions this time are different, but the outcome is going to be the same. And the outcome is that you will be victorious. The outcome is that you will not be defeated. The outcome is that I will be there for you. I will win this battle for you. I will do it for you. But first, you got to do what I'm telling you to do this time. This time. It's okay that it's different this time. Whatever it is God's been doing in your life, it may be different than what you're used to. It's okay that it's different this time. It's okay that it looks different this time. It's okay that it's not what you're used to. Allow God to do what only He can do in the way that only He understands. It's okay that it's different this time. Somebody say, it's different this time. It's different this time. One more time. It's different this time. It's different this time, and that's okay.